Today, we're diving deep into an often overlooked aspect of American history, how Native American governments and political structures influenced the creation of the United States Constitution. While we often focus on European thinkers, the indigenous peoples of this land played a significant role in shaping the American political system. Let's explore how these nations' practices helped inspire the formation of the US government. Most people know that the US Constitution was drafted in 1787, but not everyone knows the profound impact Native American governments had on its creation. The Founding Fathers, many of whom spent time interacting with native nations, were influenced by indigenous ideas about democracy, governance, and society. While much of the political inspiration for the US Constitution is attributed to European philosophers like John Locke, Montesquieu, and Rousseau, Native American governance, especially the Iroquois Confederacy, had a profound impact on the Founding Fathers. These indigenous systems had been successfully governing for centuries before Europeans arrived, and their methods of cooperation, checks and balances, and leadership models helped lay the foundation for the American system of government. Although their political systems varied from tribe to tribe, many Native American nations, like the Iroquois Confederacy, had complex, decentralized political systems that were admired by some of the US founders. Let's start with the Iroquois Confederacy, also known as the Haudenosaunee. The Iroquois Confederacy, also known as the Six Nations, consisted of the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and later the Tuscarora. It existed for centuries before the arrival of Europeans and served as one of the longest-running examples of a democratic federation in the world. The Confederacy was founded on principles of peace, unity, and shared decision-making. Its structure was a decentralized confederation, meaning the individual tribes retained their sovereignty, but they worked together on shared issues such as trade, warfare, and diplomacy. This model of governance proved highly effective in maintaining peace and order within the Confederacy, and it allowed the nations to remain strong despite their differences. One of the most important features of the Iroquois system was the Great Law of Peace, a set of moral codes and governing principles that guided the Confederacy. The Great Law of Peace is an extensive system that emphasized justice, peace, and equality. It outlined the duties of the leaders, the processes for decision-making, and even laid out a system of checks and balances, similar to the structure found in the US Constitution. The Great Law of Peace called for a council of chiefs known as sachems from each of the 6 tribes. These leaders would gather regularly to discuss matters affecting the Confederacy. The leaders were chosen based on their wisdom and integrity, and importantly, they were accountable to the people. The concept of council meetings and a system of checks and balances would later be echoed in the US Senate and other democratic institutions. Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams were among the Founding Fathers who took inspiration from Native American political systems. Franklin, in particular, was an admirer of the Iroquois Confederacy. In his 1751 letter to the governors of Pennsylvania and the other colonies, Franklin praised the Iroquois' model of unity and self-governance. Franklin's admiration for the Iroquois system grew from his belief that the unity of the 6 nations could serve as a model for the American colonies. He saw how the Confederacy's balance of power, through its councils and decentralized decision-making, allowed for peaceful and efficient cooperation between the tribes. Franklin even used the Iroquois as an example during the Albany Congress of 1754, calling for the American colonies to unite, much like the Iroquois had done centuries earlier. Thomas Jefferson, too, was impressed by the democratic practices of the Iroquois. While he didn't directly implement their systems, Jefferson admired their ability to govern effectively without a centralized monarchy. The decentralization of power in the Iroquois Confederacy mirrored the ideas he had for the new American government, where power would be distributed between states and the federal government. Additionally, James Madison, often referred to as the father of the Constitution, spent considerable time thinking about how to form a government that could balance the needs of a diverse group of states, a concept the Iroquois had perfected. The system of federalism, which allowed for both unity and autonomy, would later become a key feature of the US Constitution. An important aspect of Iroquois governance that often gets overlooked is the significant role women played in their political system. In Iroquois society, women held the power to nominate and remove chiefs. Clan mothers were the key decision-makers, and they had the authority to remove leaders who failed to meet the needs of the people. The Iroquois system was unique not only in its democratic structure, but also in its inclusion of women in the political process. Women had significant power within their communities and were responsible for ensuring the welfare of the tribe. The influence of clan mothers was far-reaching. If a chief was not fulfilling their duties or was acting against the will of the people, the women had the power to remove them. While women's political influence in the US government took much longer to materialize, the Iroquois model was an example of gender inclusivity in leadership. It demonstrated the value of women's participation in governance, a concept that would eventually become a key issue in the fight for women's rights in the US. In fact, many early suffragists, such as Matilda Joslyn Gage, were inspired by the Iroquois system. So what were the shared values between Native American political systems like the Iroquois Confederacy and the US Constitution? First, both systems valued balance and harmony. In the Iroquois Confederacy, decisions were made with an emphasis on consensus, ensuring that all voices were heard before a decision was made. This principle of inclusion and cooperation helped to shape the democratic ideals of the US government. The founders valued this balance and tried to incorporate it into the structure of the American government, particularly through the separation of powers. Second, both systems promoted federalism, a form of government where states or tribes maintain their own sovereignty but work together for shared goals. The Iroquois Confederacy's structure allowed individual tribes to govern themselves while maintaining a united front on external matters. Similarly, the US Constitution created a system of federalism where states retained their rights but were bound together under a central government. Lastly, the respect for diversity was another key value. The Iroquois Confederacy included different tribes, each with its own culture and traditions, yet they cooperated for the greater good. This concept was important to the Founding Fathers when they designed the Constitution. They wanted to create a government that could accommodate a nation of diverse people with different interests, religions, and backgrounds. While the Iroquois Confederacy and other Native American nations had a lasting impact on the US Constitution, their contributions have often been overlooked in mainstream history. For much of American history, Native Americans were seen as obstacles to westward expansion, and their political systems were largely disregarded. In reality, Native American governments provided a model for cooperation, diplomacy, and democracy that could have influenced the development of the US Constitution. As we examine the history of the Constitution, we should acknowledge the debt the Founding Fathers owe to the Indigenous peoples who had practiced democratic governance for centuries before. Native American nations, particularly the Iroquois Confederacy, inspired many of the principles that would later shape the US Constitution. From federalism and democratic principles to the inclusion of diverse voices in governance, the Founding Fathers looked to Indigenous practices to guide the formation of the United States. By recognizing the influence of Native American governance, we gain a deeper understanding of the roots of American democracy. As we continue to study the history of the US Constitution, let's not forget the valuable lessons we can learn from the nations that lived on this land long before the United States was even a concept. The legacy of Native American governance is an integral part of the story of our country's founding. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into American history. Until next time, take care.